So this should be the final video in this series. We'll just round it off. So instead of saying balance equals 10, I'm going to get a number from the user. And I've already mentioned the fact that I need to get a number. So instead of raw underscore input, I'm going to use input, which will give me a number. You might like to test this out when you're running your program. Instead of putting a number in, put a letter in, see what happens. I'm going to give the user a message. Please enter an amount to play with. In reality, we would do what we call validation checks. In other words, we would check the amount that was input, and if they typed a letter or something stupid or nothing at all, then we would ask again or not let them play. That's called validation. We'll deal with that at some point in the future, probably the next game that we do. So this now says how much would you want to play with, and the user gets to choose. And as long as the balance is greater than 0, they're going to run through the game as before. So let's save this and run it. One line changed. Let's see what we've got in our game. Please enter amount to play with. Now notice that the cursor is butted right up against the H there, which is tempting to put a space in to make it look nice and then put a value in. I don't want that to happen, so really I need to think about my program and change this line here to have a space. Anyway, let's see what happens. Let's say I put 3 in. You lose, game over. So that worked nicely. So I've got my space in there now. Sometimes I like to actually put a colon at the end so it looks neat when we're asking them to enter money, amount to play with, colon, then a space. Sometimes I even like to put in an arrow to say where you've got to put it in. They're just hints and clues to the user, just to make it look nicer. I'm going to close the shell down. It's getting rather large. I want a clean one when I run my program. So right, the next thing I wanted to do was print out what the 2 dice were. Now this is important. What I'm going to do is print out each and every time I roll my dice and check the value. I'm going to make a print statement, and I'm going to put you rolled a space. Now because this is a string and I need a number, because dice is a number, I need a comma, not a plus symbol. Plus is for joining strings, comma is for joining numbers. So you rolled a, and then I need to put dice 1, a comma, and then another message for dice 2, and there we go, comma, and then dice 2. Now that is, it's not very pleasant, and having to remember whether I'm using a comma or a plus, it can be quite difficult at times. So I'm going to teach you a new print statement to go with that. But for the time being, I'm going to copy that and paste it in each one of these so that we can see what I roll each time. So if I run my module, please enter an amount to play with, 3. You lose, you rolled a 1 and a 3. So now I can see the dice that I am rolling. It's just giving me 2 for a balance. I probably need a message there. Please enter, press enter to continue. There you go. I rolled a 6 and a 5, 11. So I lost. I rolled a 3 and a 6. Press enter to continue. Game over, because I only said I was going to play with 3. Now, think about this. This print statement, take a look at it. It's identical, and I know it's identical because I copied and pasted each one, and I don't actually need to do that. Where I've got print balance, I could also print the message to the user, and I'm going to do it now in a new format. That's a word that I need to remember, format, and I'm going to do it like this: print you rolled a, and then in curly braces. Now they're very difficult to see. That is not a round bracket like you would get if you press shift and 9 or shift and 0. This one is a shift and on top of the square bracket next to the P you'll find the curly bracket. I'm going to put a 0 because that's the first item in the list that I'm going to give it. You need to bear with me on this one. We'll certainly deal with this quite a lot. And a 1 because that's going to be the first item on the or the second item on the list, sorry. So that is my message, but I'm going to use a new way of sort of writing these out, dice 1 and dice 2. I'm going to put dot format, then in brackets dice 1 comma dice 2. Now we don't need to use plus symbols or anything else like that. That's not what this comma is standing for. That's just separating dice 1 from dice 2 in my list. And although I've just used the word list, it's not a list as such. We're going to see lists in another lesson, but for all intents and purposes this is a list of variables, and the first one is the 0th one. So that 0 there is going to be replaced with the value for dice 1. That 1 there is going to be replaced with the value for dice 2. So I'm leaving these statements in for the time being so that you can see what is happening. They should be almost identical statements but printed out in a different way, and this last one will just appear right above the press enter to continue. So let's run the program and just check that. We'll only put in 2 goes just to see the actual message. So that was our original one, you rolled a 3 and a 3, and that is our new one, you rolled a 3 and a 3. The new one looks a little bit better, it's not got a space there. We formatted it a lot better. A couple of important things. One, I only did it once. Now that's got nothing to do with the print statement, it's got everything to do with the fact that what happens when it checks something. If it was 2, it would come in here, do that, and then jump down to these lines. It would jump over the elif and the else. And the same if it was 7, it wouldn't do this one. It would jump straight into this one and print that one out, and then jump straight down to here. And same if it wasn't 2, it would jump straight to here, and then it would do the else and print that one. So really it's only printing one of these at a time, so I've chosen to actually do that out of the if statement. So I can actually get rid of these lines. They're not needed. And what I'm also going to do is use my new style print statement to print the balance. So print your balance equals, and I'm just going to put the in 0 with the 2 curly brackets, and then dot format and then balance. Now this time I've only got one item in this parenthesis, and I've only got one item in here. You balance, your balance. So this time I'm going to get a better message when I run the program. 2, there you go, you lose, your balance equals 1. You rolled a 6 and a 6, press enter to continue. Now that reminds me, we did say we were going to deal with what happens if they throw a double. And if they throw a double, they're going to get a free go. Basically that is not going to cost them anything, we're not going to add to their money and we're not going to take away from their money, but it does give us a chance to write another elif statement in here. Elif dice 1 is equal to dice 2, so that's a double, and the only thing it won't match with is snake eyes because we did that at the top. So if it was 1 and a 1, it would just do this. If it's a 2 and a 2, it will come down here. So I need a colon at the end and print a nice message. Print you have a free go, and it is not going to add anything to the balance or take anything away. Essentially you just got a free go, but we've now checked for a double. So I can run that program It might take a while to actually throw a double. Whoops. Yeah, it's going to take us a while to test that one. We could write a little program to help us test things. We will see that in future programs, but I'm not going to go there now because really I just want to sort of finish this one off by giving the user some statistics. This is about ratio. If you understand ratio in maths, then great. If you don't, then just add it to your program just for a little bit of practice. But what I want to do is find out how many goes they have. So I'm going to have attempts, and I'm going to set it to 0. Now I've done that as I did with the balance outside of the loop. I set it initially, and each time through this loop I am going to add 1 to the attempts. So really the loop sort of ends here on the raw input. So as long as I put it in the same level as these 3 statements, that will be fine. Do not put it inside the else statement, otherwise it will only add 1 attempt if you lose. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the balance. Attempts equals attempts plus 1, and then I'm going to print out a nice little message. Print you had, remember the 0, and the string dot format attempts. This is just for practice. I'm going to move that shortly into here to make it look nicer, but this is going to tell me how many attempts I had for my money. So if I run the module now, and you go, how much do you want to play with? 2. You lose. You had 1. I didn't say attempt. Your balance is 1. You rolled a 6 and a 5. Press enter to continue. There we go. You lose. You've had 2 attempts. Your balance is 0. You rolled a 6 and a 3. Press enter to continue. And if I do that, I get game over. So let's tidy up this message. Your balance is now, that's better, and you have had 1 attempts. Now that 1 doesn't mean I've had 1 attempt, it means that I'm going to go to the next value in my list. So balance is 0, then comma, then attempts is 1, so I can get rid of that line and run my program, and you'll see the improvement now. There you go. Your balance is now 1 and you've had 1 attempt. You rolled a 4 and a 2. Press enter to continue. There we go. Game over. So what I would like to do at the very end is that ratio and what it would sort of look like. Let's take it out of the main loop. Let's put it when just before I print game over, because I don't really need to know beforehand. I don't need to know every time through the loop how that's changing. I just need to know at the end of the game. So print the ratio of plays for your initial amount equals. Now I need a ratio in here, and I'm just going to put my 0 because it's going to be the first one in my dot format. And the reason why I put this is because inside here, up until now, I've just put a variable, dice 1 or dice 2, balance or attempts, and this time I'm going to put a sort of equation. I'm going to put my number of attempts divided by, now I can't do the balance, because if I do the balance, it drops out of this loop only when the balance is 0. And if I try to divide a number by 0, I will get an error. You get an error with that on your calculator. So what I need to do is, when I ask the user for how much they want to play with and store it in balance, I need another copy of that. I'm not going to ask the user again. Initial amount. I'm just going to set that equal to whatever the balance was. So the initial amount is the balance. So the person receives the message, how much you want to play with, that goes into balance. The next line says initial amount is the same as balance, then attempts is 0, and then we play our game loop over and over again, printing out the messages at the end, waiting for a person to press enter. When they have 0 left, when their balance is 0, it drops out and runs these two lines. So now I've got this initial, spelled initial incorrectly up there. I've got initial amount here. So attempts divided by the initial amount. Now I'm going to use a bit of logic. Again, we did this before in the worksheets. That is an integer. That is an integer. And if I try to divide it, I'm going to get an integer answer. And I don't want an integer answer. I want a decimal answer. So I've got to convert both of these to decimals by using float. So put brackets around attempts and then float, put brackets around initial amount. I've run out of screen space. We call this real estate screen space. There we go. And now that is going to print out the ratio. So the final run of the game, and then we're complete with this. And we're up to what we did in the lesson. Please enter an amount to play with. 3. You win. Your balance is now 4 and you've had 1 attempt. You rolled a 2 and a 5. That's a 7. Press enter. You win. Balance is now 5, etc. Oh, had a free go. I must have rolled a double, and I did. I rolled a 5 and a 5. Okay, carry on playing. Alright, until I get to the end. I'm getting quite a lot of goes for this. I've still got money. I've had 9 attempts already, and I've only started off with 3. That was quite good. There we go. So we finally got to 0, and then it told me the ratio of plays for your initial amount is 3.667. So I've got a decimal number here, which is what I wanted. And it's saying I had around about 3.5 attempts for the amount of money that I put in. So I put 3 in. So 3.5 times 3 is going to be around about 9, 10 and a half, 11 goes. And that tells me I've had 11 attempts. So that's the game in total. It's a beginning game. Hopefully you wrote this in the lesson. If you didn't, go back through it. If you don't understand things, please let me know.